As the studio lights for The Voice Season 27 playoffs were turned down to a gentle, ethereal glow, they produced long shadows across the stage that was made of elegant materials. At the month of November 2024, the tension that was present at the Universal Studios Hollywood lot was felt by everyone. This, Ethan Eckenroad, a 24-year-old musician from Asheville, North Carolina, was about to take the most significant risk of his musical journey. The playoffs were a crucible, where aspirations were either made or broken, and this was the night that he was ready to take that chance. Ethan prepared to perform a raw and poignant performance of Lord Huron's The Night We Met, a song that would either catapult him to the live shows or mark the end of his time on the competition. His coach, John Legend, was watching carefully from the sidelines as Ethan prepared to perform the song. Ethan had a lot of experience performing on stage, but the voice was a completely different animal. With a blind audition that turned all 4 chairs, his raw, soulful voice swept through the room like a mountain wind. This was the beginning of his adventure, which had first began several months before. In an effort to win him over, John Legend had exerted a great deal of effort, admiring the lived-in quality of his tone, which was a combination of bluesy depth and folk sincerity. During this time, Ethan was confronted with a crucial moment in the playoffs. The selection of the song was daring. Lord Huron's indie folk ballad, which is well known for its subtle sorrow, was a break from the powerhouse anthems that are typically preferred in this round. However, Ethan was not present in order to be safe. While the other members of the stage crew were adjusting the mix, Ethan stood in the center of the stage, his figure being framed by a backdrop of sparkling stars that was projected on a big screen. His dark hair was somewhat ruffled, and he wore a faded leather jacket over a basic white t-shirt. This gave him the appearance of a roaming troubadour. He held an acoustic guitar in his hands, the wood of which had been scraped by years of playing late-night gigs at dive bars in Asheville for years. In the moment when Carson Daly, the host, introduced him, the audience, which consisted of a mixture of yelling fans and stoic industry types, became silent. I am pleased to introduce Ethan Eckenroad, who is performing Lord Huron's The Night We Met. Slow and methodical, the initial chords emanated from Ethan's guitar, with each note lingering in the air like a recollection. The arrangement consisted of little more than his voice and the guitar, with a subtle cello drone joining in to provide a spectral undertone to the mix. In the beginning, he began by saying, "I am not the only traveler," with a voice that was deep in age, carrying the weight of someone who has loved and lost. As the thousands of people who were present in the studio and the millions of people who were watching from home were lured into the intimacy of his performance, the studio shrank. To say that Ethan's performance was raw would be an understatement. There was a small crack in his voice as he sang, "Who Has Taken My Place?" and the way his fingers lingered on a chord, allowing it to reverberate. He did not strive for perfection. Rather, he leaned into the defects. It seemed as though he was singing to a single individual rather than a large group of people, conjuring up a moment of sadness beneath a moonlit sky. It was in his hands that the lyrics, which were beautiful and mournful, took on a new life, with each line being a brushstroke that painted a story of yearning. With his eyes fixated on Ethan, John Legend leaned forward in the coach's chairs and looked at him intently. Reba McEntire, a seasoned veteran of emotional concerts, could be seen clutching her notepad with her lips slightly parted behind her ear. Snoop Dogg, who is known for his ability to watch closely, gave a languid nod while tapping his fingers rhythmically on the desk. Her hands were clasped together as she gently swayed. Gwen Stefani, who is well known for her affinity to indie vibes. The voice of Ethan was doing what great performances do, which is to make the audience feel something. The intensity of Ethan's voice increased when he approached the chorus, which contained the words, "I had all and then most of you, some and now none of you." The loudness of his voice did not increase. As the cello flourished, creating a melancholy counterpoint, the lighting on the stage changed to a light blue, creating the impression of a winter night. The only sounds that could be heard from the audience were a few sniffles and gasps. The hand of her buddy was being held by a young woman who was sitting in the first row. Her face was smudged with mascara. An elderly gentleman who had come to the back to show his support for another competitor was taken aback by the unexpected emotion that he experienced, and his eyes sparkled. The performance that Ethan gave was a superb example of self-control. He was able to resist the temptation to oversing, which is a pitfall that many candidates on The Voice fall into during the playoffs. He chose to let the music breathe instead, his phrasing being natural and even conversational in nature. While standing on the bridge, he closed his eyes and said, "Take me back to the night we met." His voice was shaking with a sense of vulnerability that was reminiscent of saying a confession. That was a moment of unadulterated connection, the kind that goes beyond the contest and becomes something that will stand the test of time. In the backstage area, Ethan's family watched the performance on a monitor. Their expressions ranged from proud to nervous. It was his younger sister who said, "That's my brother." She had traveled for 6 hours to ensure that she was there. As he cleaned his cheek, his father, a reserved individual who rarely displayed emotion, did so. They were aware of the significance of this song to Ethan, because it was the one he had played after a breakup 2 years previously, while he was sitting alone in his apartment and letting his anger out through the strings. Currently, he was exposing that suffering to the entire world. While the last sounds were beginning to slip away, Ethan played one final chord and allowed it to sink away in his stillness. For a brief while, the studio was silent, and then it suddenly exploded. There was a tidal wave of applause from the audience, which caused them to leap to their feet. Signs that said, "We love Ethan," floated above the audience throughout the event. The voice of Carson Daly could be heard crying out, "What a moment!" However, the reactions of the coaches were the ones that counted the most. The first person to speak was John Legend. "Ethan, that was a gift," he continued, his voice firm. Nonetheless, he was overcome with emotion. "We were taken to a place that was genuine and profound by you. That is the purpose that music is designed to serve." As Reba continued to fan herself with her notepad, she continued, "Boy, you destroyed my heart and then put it back together again. That is just stunning." As he smiled, Snoop kept his message straightforward. "You got soul, man. Authentic soul." Using a tissue to wipe her eyes, Gwen stated, "I felt every word. You are a renowned artist." Immediate action was taken by the social media storm. The internet was filled with videos of Ethan's performance, and within minutes, hashtags such as Ethan Eckenroad and The Voice became highly popular. One user remarked, "This guy just redefined the night we met," and the video went on to receive thousands more shares throughout the day. Someone else pointed out that Ethan Eckenroad is the genuine article. What a miraculous occurrence. It was a performance that seemed more like a concert than a competition, and music websites would later name it one of the most memorable moments of season 27. When it came to Ethan, the moment was a haze. "You did it, man," John Legend whispered to him as he hugged him as he exited the stage during the performance. Backstage, his fellow competitors surrounded him, and their cheers could be heard reverberating down the corridor. For Ethan, however, the real win was in the act of doing. He took a song that he cherished and made it his own, exposing his innermost thoughts and feelings to a world that was listening. There would be further playoffs, and the outcome of Ethan's situation would be determined by John Legend's choice. But regardless of the outcome, he had left an imprint that could never be erased. On a night in November of 2024, Ethan Eckenroad did more than just sing. He also recounted a narrative, weaved a spell, and reminded everyone that the purpose of The Voice is to discover the voices that move us and that make us feel alive.